Hello, Prairie View students, families, and friends. Today should be an easy guess, but what about yesterday? Yesterday, I was in Mrs. Godke's room. So if you guessed that, you were right. We're reading The Snow Treasure by Marie McSwiggan. We're on chapter 24. Uncle Victor wanted to know how his prisoner came to be wearing a German uniform, and this is the story the Polish boy told. My name is Jan Lasek. My home is Krakow, near the German border. I was born the year of the armistice, 1918, when Poland declared her independence. Until last summer, I was a student of languages at the University of Krakow. I always wanted to go to America where I could practice my English and study it further. But there were 6 in our family, and to spare the money was out of the question. My sister went to Pittsburgh to marry one of our countrymen. My grandmother was already living there. My grandmother died. She left me some money. The legacy was in the bank in Pittsburgh, and it was easier if I'd go there to get it. So I was to have a year of study in America after all. All last summer, when there was no signs of trouble, my father would say, "Jan, you need to go to America." But I had a job tutoring, and I was making money. And so I waited until just before the University of Pittsburgh would open. I waited too long. The last week in August, I went to Gdynia to take the boat for America. I had my ticket and my passport. But when I turned them in to go on board, a strange thing happened. 2 men wearing police uniforms came up and took me by the shoulders. "You're to come with us," they said. I had to go along. There was nothing else to do. But instead of taking me where someone would tell me what was wanted of me, they threw me into a dark basement, and there I stayed for 2 days and nights without so much a crust of bread or a drop of water. It was because they had forgotten about me. In the meantime, the Germans came across into Poland and bombed, I think, 23 cities. But this I learned later. Then I knew only what I could guess from what had troubled my father and from the sound of the bombs dropping all around. After 2 days, they remembered about me and brought me food and water. I inquired what had happened, and they told me that Germany and Poland were at war. I asked about my ticket and my passport, and they only shrugged. "The boat left yesterday," they said. "Jan Lasek was aboard." Little by little, I began to understand. They had wanted my passport from someone else. So I was locked up, and that other is masquerading in the United States, doing I don't know what harm. The men who arrested me were not Polish, but German secret police in uniforms they brought with them from their own country. For in the house where I was kept prisoner, I saw every kind of uniform or costume you could think of. There were disguises for clergymen, even the robes for a bishop. Men's formal dress included ribbons and medals of a diplomat. For the women were all kinds of clothing, from the cap and apron of a parlor maid to the furs and jewelries of a countess. One of the people in that house wore the black dress and inverted collar of the cleric. Here is one who will help me, I thought, before I knew about the disguises. This man of God will advise me in my troubles. One day, when I had a chance, I spoke to him. I'm being kept here, against my will, I said. Will you help me get back to my own people? He laughed and he put me to shame. "So you think I make a convincing-looking clergyman?" he said. "But you flatter me." When next I saw him, he was wearing the uniform of a Gestapo German. But he did not hold my question against me. I thought he seemed to like me, for he spoke to me often, which was more than the rest of them did. One time I saw him packing a vase vassal preparatory to going away. But first he had to unpack it. He took out the uniform of a streetcar conductor. This is what I wore when I first came to Poland 2 years ago. He held up the cap for me to read the letters of its insignia, and then he showed me the coat and the trousers. From one of the pockets, he drew out a book of streetcar tickets. I learned more about Poland in 1 year of riding the Warsaw tram cars than most people will know in a lifetime, and I found my knowledge very useful. I asked him why so many different kinds of dress were found in one house. But it is wise to have changes of dress. Come, I'll show you. He opened a large wardrobe, and from it he drew out a suit of Scotch tweed, plaid cap, rough shoes, and heavy blackthorn skit went with it. Then he began practicing his Scottish dialect. The dress of a Scotsman was very helpful to me, he mocked. It caught me into the British embassy. There I drew more than one piece of information out of servants. Information was grateful receiving at home. Who wears the nurse's uniform, I asked. Who wear them but our women agents? They get employed in an influential family where they can learn much that our country wishes to know. So what does it matter if an employer or maid furnishes the uniform? It's only a few marks one way or the other. One of our girls was able to bring us information about a depot of ammunition our agents didn't know existed. It was blown up, he finished. Spies, I said, entirely without regard of what he would do to me, but it didn't make him angry. He only shrugged his shoulders. Call us that if you like. We describe ourselves as patriots. Patriots? Yes, you can call yourselves if you mean coming into a peaceful country and getting control of it by lies, sneakiness, bribery, and corruption. But that's the highest form of patriotic duty to one's own country, he said, and I'll say this much for him. He was speaking the truth as he knew it. One of these disguises was given to me. It was a uniform of a German private. I had to put it on or I'd be shot. But what do you want of me? I asked the woman of the house. Our Führer needs your passport for his work in America, he said. But why must I wear a German uniform? I asked. You ought to be glad to wear it. You have been left to die in the basement. Why do I owe my life to this uniform? You were locked in. Nobody meant you should die of starvation, but you were forgotten about. You've been more important things to think about than one Pole. But we need someone who knew the languages, not one or two, but many foreign tongues. Your papers say you are a student of languages, so you will be an interpreter for the army. Never, I said. My country at war with Germany, and I will do nothing to help an enemy. Don't worry, she said. In a short time, there will be no war. Poland will have surrendered. One day I was taken out of this house with a body of German guardsmen. I was put on a train and sent south to my own city of Krakow. It was in Krakow for months after that. You can imagine my shame when one of my few old neighbors that were left saw me in a Nazi uniform. My father was dead. He was shot when he went to the assistance of an old priest who was dragged off the altar at Mass. My mother was not there. They say she got to Romania and took my little brother and sister. 2 of my brothers died defending our city. My home, I saw, there were hardly 2 bricks standing on top of each other. I made no mention of humiliation of our people, or how the Germans stole our money, our homes, our farms, and the few potatoes in our fields. I say nothing of what they did to our priests, or of how they took our young men and made them work at hard labor for themselves. nor of how they turned the women and children out of their houses overnight and sold those houses to the people in Germany. All these things I see with my own eyes. Me they treated with civility. Always I've had enough to eat and a bed. I translated orders from the officers into whatever language is needed for posting to the civilian population. Polish there, Norwegian here. If I refuse, they shoot me, and all the while I'm hoping to live for Poland. Norway has seen little. It's Poland that's suffered. Here you think the Germans are decent, and they have behaved better in your country than in mine. Perhaps it is because they think of Norway as part of Germany, so they have not yet turned all your food and left you to starve. Poland they have used as an example. It was to show what would happen if you did not submit. Now, you know why I am not spying on you to tell the Germans with promotion. You know why I've watched your children, because if you belong to a country that has been invaded as mine has, then you are drawn into sympathy to people that have similarly suffered. You know now that I must go to America. The end of chapter 24. Have a great night.